Welcome back, Only Playbook fans. I am Shovid. I have Dr. Shishel Oja just finished his shift, and now he's ready to talk about fantasy football here with me. No Sweetcar, unfortunately, but we've got a great show coming in for you. But first off, let's start off with Shishel. How have you been, man? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time, honestly. And this year I've been doing more fantasy football than ever before, believe it or not.
Really?
I've been waking up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Now I'm setting 3 alarms. I do this weird thing where I don't even think about setting my lineup until 2:09, and then I give myself 1 hour to have a clear mind until 3:09. And then I watch the decisions I make at 2:09 happen in front of me at 3:09, and then I go to sleep at 4:09. So 2 hours every Wednesday night. I am just laser focused fantasy football, and it's working. I'm making good decisions, better decisions than I would otherwise.
I feel like the work habits as a doctor, you probably have to be on call. You've got weird schedules. So this is like perfect for you. For me, I try to wake up at 2 a.m., but I'm so focused on our league that I don't even look at the other league, and I forget to set my waivers, right, for the other league that I'm in.
Mhm.
But the beauty of it is that guys like McNichols weren't even picked on waivers. Guys like Gus Edwards weren't even. So I woke up at 6 a.m. and I was able to pick them up. So it's not as intense as our league that we're in, but nonetheless, it's good to have this player. So glad you're making the right decisions. Speaking of right decisions, we're going to be talking about starts and sits here today, boom and bust, and some hidden gems on kicker and defenses. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and kick right off into this. So you put in a start and sit. First off, why don't you take it off? The first start and sit that we have.
Yeah. Today. So the first one we're going to discuss is one with multiple players. This one comes from one of Sweetcar's friends. Cooper Kupp versus New Orleans, McLaurin versus Tennessee, Waddle versus Packers, or Brian Thomas versus Houston. This person already has, I think he already has Cooper Kupp as an auto start. Is that right? So He's debating between these other guys. Yeah, so in my mind, McLaurin is a unique player. He's one of the most unique players this year because he doesn't have volume, and he's not necessarily targeted as the number one option on the team. It's a very unique situation, but he's producing. He's like in the top 10. He might be number like 5 through 10 in your setting in your league on the wide receiver side of things. That's pretty high up for somebody that's not a high volume player, and he's not necessarily a target, a touchdown hog either. It's like it's odd. It's kind of like a Brian Thomas situation, but Brian Thomas kind of fell off because of the quarterback situation. But they're both very similar. Deep bombs always going their way at least 2 or 3 times a game, more than what Tyreek Hill can say right now. But so it's that type of player. So you have to understand that you're not getting 10, 12 targets like you're getting with other number one wide receivers, but he's in the top 10. So you have to keep that in mind. Waddle versus Packers. I think a lot of fantasy players are going to get confused with this Waddle situation and kind of start going the wrong direction because they're going to think he's back. And oh my God, Waddle giving you 24 plus points. That's just how things are going to be. That's not how things are going to be. This is one of the most biggest asterisks I'm going to put on the page because Tyreek Hill is recovering from a wrist injury. He's got a ligament injury that takes time to heal, and I think it's slowly healing. He's getting better and better. They just don't want to aggravate something that they know is a serious problem, but they still have other weapons available. So, but I think we're slowly getting to that Hill page. I think it's going to be perfect time in the playoff time for Hill. I haven't given up. People probably think I'm crazy because a lot of people are ruined for the season because of Hill, but it's not over. It's really definitely not over, and there's opening coming up for their schedule. But I think Waddle versus Packers it's a terrible setup. Packers are really good against pass defense, and that's what they specialize in is the things that Waddle does well, which is deep balls and deep ends. They just don't allow that. They have a really good linebacker core. So be careful there. And then Brian Thomas versus Houston. I just talked about the situation. 6 weeks ago, I would have been like, Houston's going to be putting up numbers left and right. You got to start Brian Thomas, and now we don't even know who the quarterback for Brian Thomas is going to be. It's an iffy situation still, and it's Wednesday night. And then Houston's just not as big of an offensive firepower as we had hoped, but I think they're also figuring it out. I know it's late. It's weird for someone to be saying people are figuring things out week 13, but Houston is getting back to the way things should be. Their offensive line is kind of in disarray right now, and that's really showing up. But in a game against the Jaguars, I think they're going to put up good numbers, which means Brian Thomas by default has to put up big numbers. Here, I'm going to lean McLaurin, just because of what things have been happening, and in tough times, in tough situations, where does Jayden Daniels look? It's McLaurin. And I think Jayden Daniels will realize, I'm sure he woke up like Monday morning like, maybe I should give the ball to McLaurin like a little bit more. Like 3 more passes could probably be another touchdown.
Yeah.
It's that type of mindset here. Tennessee's a pretty good defense, but I think McLaurin is just that type of guy where it really doesn't matter what defense you play. He's going to get a couple deep bombs a game. He's going to get 6 catches a game, and there's a really good chance he may score in that game as well. So looking at everything, I'm going to choose McLaurin. What do you think, Shobit?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Cooper Kupp is a no-brainer. You got to start him. So that gives you 3 options: McLaurin, Waddle, and Brian Thomas. And honestly, these are 3 big names in fantasy football. Like if you have them as wide receiver 2, you have to start them. But since you have this option, to be honest with you, I actually leaned Waddle versus Packers. I understand that the linebacker issue is definitely and the way that how they allow points, that's an issue. But to me, I'm thinking the conversation that we just had with Brian Thomas, right? Now, let's say Trevor Lawrence is fine and he's starting and there's no issues, doesn't have a shoulder issue or anything he's coming back from, then I think that Brian Thomas is a set start. You don't know what you're going to get from Trevor Lawrence. Waddle, I think the Packers can score a lot of points and they are a good offense. So in that same mindset as Brian Thomas needs to make sure to, be effective in this offense, I think Waddle is also that same guy. With Terry McLaurin, I'm seeing that Jayden Daniels, they're kind of running the ball more with him. And the fact that we see De'Ami Brown getting more targets for Washington, Jayden Daniels running the ball, McLaurin's catches came in the late 4th quarter. So I don't know if I feel confident in the amount of targets that he can get. For me, it's between McLaurin and Waddle. Because I think the Packers can score more points, Waddle needs to be part of the game plan as well. I'm going to lean Waddle here.
Yeah. Totally fair. It's still pretty youthful in the Waddle side of things. We haven't seen much all year long, and we had a big game.
Yeah.
But I can see why you would want to go Waddle. I had Waddle 2 years ago, and I thought he was the greatest thing ever exist. It was amazing doing those Waddle dances. And then last year kind of let us down a little bit, but yeah, I think there's room here for improvement. Perfectly, the game script can fall in Waddle's lap perfectly.
Yeah. And even the owner was doing the Waddle dance. I don't know if you saw when Waddle scored a touchdown. So that was kind of funny. All right, next up, so this is going to be my Pittsburgh Steelers, Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren versus Cincinnati Bengals. And man, I've been on the Warren camp all year this year. When he's active, when he's playing, I've had to start him. Because I way positioned my team as wide receiver strength and RBs are 2 or 3. So I've had to play Warren. But I think that in this scenario, I look at a Cincinnati team and I'm thinking they're not one of the better red zone defenses teams. They allow their top 6 or bottom 6 in red zone points allowed. So for me, I'm looking at a team that Steelers can move the ball. If they get into the end zone, the guy that's going to be getting the ball is going to be Najee for me. And it may not be pretty for Najee, but I'm going to be touchdown dependent, where I think that Warren can be more effective and have better, carries, yards per carries and things of that sort. But I just think that the chances of Najee getting a touchdown are a lot higher than Jaylen Warren getting a touchdown. So I'm leaning Najee here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've leaned Najee all year long just because he's like a AAA Derrick Henry. You know what I mean? Like he's just not good enough to be Derrick Henry.
Great value Derrick Henry.
In his mind, he is Derrick Henry. Najee truly believes he's Derrick Henry. And that I trust. I respect that. And you're in Arthur Smith offense. That's really the key here is Arthur Smith. Yep. That's the whole reason I drafted him in the first place, because he'll get the touches. You're getting 20 touches a game. And, fantasy volume is king. So I truly believe this is one of those games he gets those touches. But I also know the game script can fall off real quick when it comes to Najee. If you're down by 2 scores, which is very possible against Cincinnati, all of a sudden your game scripted out and it's Warren fest, right? So I'm kind of leaning Warren here, mainly because of that exact reason. I think Joe Burrow's pissed off. I think he just has this chip on his shoulder that I'm afraid for whoever is facing Joe Burrow for the rest of the year, because it's just going to be slaughterfest. And I think in that scenario, Warren needs to step up. But here, I mean, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and they are pretty good at holding teams. And Cincinnati's offensive line isn't the best, and you still have TJ Watt and all these other guys trying to get your quarterback's head off. So, this is going to be an interesting divisional matchup, but I do think there's going to be a lot of goal line stands and a lot of red zone stalls. So I'll talk a little bit more about the kicking situation later, but I do think Warren's PPR stuff shines in this game.
Yeah, I'm worried for Pittsburgh defense if you're starting them this week. I mean, Cincinnati, if they start scoring points, they're coming off of a bye week. I know they've game planning for
Sure.
beating these Steelers defenders who are decent, but Joey Porter can get handsy. Weird things can happen where Pittsburgh can allow a lot of points. So I'm with you on the Warren camp. I like the touchdown upside with Najee.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we've got Kareem Hunt versus the Las Vegas Raiders or Brian Thomas versus the Houston Texans. Who do you got?
Yeah. So, this may be unpopular opinion, but as a medical person, I don't see Kareem Hunt losing much of the touches anytime soon. It's still very youthful. I know it's nice seeing like the IR thing gone from the Pacheco situation, and I know it's nice to hear that he's back in practice, and I know it's nice to hear that Andy Reid's talking about, we're going to use them whenever one's available. Well, all of that literally dictates to me saying that they're still waiting to use him for the playoffs. Like I still think what has Hunt not done for you to take him out and put Pacheco's injury risk up there against a crappy Las Vegas team when you're 10-1? Like, make it make sense, right? So I don't have insider insight from the Chiefs or anything, but just logically thinking, and usually in fantasy, logic is king when you're making decisions. And looking at logic here, you're going to be ahead against Las Vegas, well, you would think, right? You would think, but since Chiefs are really messing with our heads with that stuff. But I do think they're going to be ahead, for the majority of the game. And I don't think they're going to try to ruin Pacheco's ankle against the worst team in the league in a game that they're supposed to win. So I do think they might use them in the beginning, but I think the game's going to end with a lot of Hunt touches. And I think that's good enough for me. Because if you're starting Hunt or Brian Thomas, you're likely putting them as a wide receiver or in the flex position, right? Or a poor wide receiver 2 or a running back 2. And I think I'm happy getting 10 points floor from Hunt rather than hoping for 14 from Brian Thomas, right? So it all depends on your confidence level, and I'm pretty confident that Kareem Hunt will give me a nice floor rather than Brian Thomas give me like all glory to God type of a situation. So yeah, I'll go Hunt here.
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on your team. If your team is not as strong and you need that home run threat from Brian Thomas, the touchdown targets, I think he has a higher ceiling than I think Kareem Hunt has. Because Kareem Hunt with Pacheco maybe coming back, maybe not. That takes away of some of his carries. So it worries me, and this game can get out of hand pretty quick, which helps Kareem Hunt, but I just haven't seen an efficient Kareem Hunt this year. I don't know if you have. It just hasn't been like Pacheco left and Kareem Hunt's going to come and take over this backfield and, get you some good fantasy production. And you haven't seen that yet. So it's tough to go down that route. So give me Brian Thomas. I want the home run with Brian Thomas against Houston here.
Cool. And then last but not least, in our start and sit segment, we have Marvin Harrison Jr. at Minnesota. Waddle versus Green Bay. Waddle and Brian Thomas just making a comeback on all these topics, huh? And then we got DJ Moore against Detroit, and we have Ridley versus Washington. What do you got?
Ooh, okay. So in this one, first of all, Marvin Harrison Jr. and the Arizona Cardinals, you just don't know what you're going to get. Vikings, I feel like, are a pretty formidable defense. So that I mean, more or less, right? That worries me a little bit if it's just like a 4-target type of day. For Marvin Harrison Jr. or something like that, that's not outside the realm of possibilities, right? So that worries me. Waddle versus Packers, I did talk about that. I like that. And DJ Moore versus Lions, I'm worried about that because the Lions defense is good, and you're trusting Caleb Williams, you're trusting the Bears offense situation. You've seen good things from them, but there's that uncertainty there. For me, I'm going Ridley versus Washington. That's the one I'm picking because Ridley is getting you the targets. He's getting the yards, and Will Levis is connecting with his receivers. If it's not Ridley, it's Westbrook-Ikhine. Pollard had a good day. I like where this offense is going, and the Commanders' defense is susceptible to have points allowed, have yards allowed. They're not the greatest defense, and so I think that I'm going to go with Ridley here. Give me the hot hand in Ridley.
Yeah, agreed with you. I'm going chasing volume here. I think Marvin Harrison's number 2 on this list for me, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I've watched every single Viking snap since the beginning of the season, and we suck. Our secondary is trash. It's all the pressure up front that's creating all the disruption. But, dude, our best player is like 40 years old. Like, it's just not cool. And, yeah, I'm attacking this secondary easily. I'm attacking the secondary. I'll hope there will be some big plays from Marvin Harrison Jr. It's just gonna happen. Vikings allow that every game. Waddle, we talked about already. I still want to see more. It's like week 2 right now. Right now, like Waddle owners have to look at this like as it's week 2. We just got week 1 done. I don't know what week 2 is going to have in store. And then DJ Moore, I was never a fan of since day one, just because they just got the second best fantasy player from last year, second best fantasy wide receiver from last year on their team, who was Keenan Allen of all people, right? So he's still going to take a lot of that safety valve away from DJ Moore. And then they still have an up and coming Rome Odunze. That his quarterback loves. And then you still have other players that are still going to get the ball more, and they're a running team. So it's just a lot of things, a lot of too many mouths to feed. I like to stay away from those type of teams significantly. And Ridley really shines more than all these other players because he has what all these people don't have, and that's a solo, high target, high volume team with a quarterback that likes to launch the ball. No matter how much we like to make fun of Levis, I have him as a formidable starter, even at a quarterback position moving forward. I'm going to be starting him in some playoff formats, mainly week 14. So, yeah, that's where I stand. I think we're both in agreement here.
For sure. Yeah, Will Levis has some good matchups coming up as well. So he's an interesting pickup if he's still available on free agency. So with that, let's move right along with the boom and bust of this week. I apologize in advance. My booms are pretty, booming. as normal.
Shout out to Boomy.
Shout out to Boomy. But I think that, Alvin Kamara and Jahmyr Gibbs, those two guys should continue to boom in your fantasy lineups. More Gibbs, really. And I think as David Montgomery is dealing with that shoulder injury, like I said last episode, he says he's going to play, but I think that he might be on a little bit of a pitch count. So give me Gibbs. If no Montgomery, man, Gibbs should be to the moon. Like nothing's going to stop that guy. So both Kamara against the Rams, who have not a great run defense, and Gibbs, he's the focal point of that offense. I think both of them should boom. What do you have?
Agreed. I was gonna say Gus Edwards earlier, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna go with AJ Brown because he's just safe. There's still no Devontae Smith. He's still not practicing, which means it's not looking good for him to play this weekend. So I'm gonna go with AJ Brown. I think this is like the Nico Collins conversation. What would happen if these guys never got hurt? And we're talking about AJ Brown likely in the top 3, along with Nico Collins in the top 2, maybe. So, these are receivers that fantasy football has missed dearly in the time that they were away. And the potential is just the ceiling for all these guys. And, I think AJ Brown is really going to take off moving forward, especially with a hobbled up counterpart on the other side. And they're going to have some good matchups coming up, and you got to keep up with Baltimore, obviously. So where else are you going to go? But AJ Brown, there's going to be a lot of points coming his way.
Yeah, the NFC is shaping up really nice, man. The Eagles look good as a whole. The offense looks amazing. The Lions are really good. So it's going to be interesting how this playoffs, how it turns out for them. AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts are connecting really well as well. So it's good to see. So with that, let's go to the bust of the week. And for me, it's DeAndre Swift versus the Detroit Lions. First of all, Detroit Lions, pretty good run defense. It's going to be hard to get yards against that defensive line. So it's a bad matchup for DeAndre Swift owners. And Roschon Johnson is coming up, and he's stealing some of the red zone carries that DeAndre Swift was getting towards the beginning of the season. So with all that being said, I think DeAndre Swift owners, it sucks to see, but I think he's going to regress down to what we expected from DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, I feel bad for him. I always enjoyed watching DeAndre Swift play, but he just is not that big of a guy to handle those goal line carries. And in fantasy, you got to get those goal line carries to be in that top echelon of starting running backs. My bust of the week is Jayden Reed. He's at home. They're going to be throwing the ball quite a bit, but I just don't think Miami's as offensively firepowered as we thought they were. I know we had a pretty good game from Tua, but again, they're playing at Packers in the cold. Miami, the last time they played well in the cold, I don't even remember. I really can't remember. They're really bad in the cold, which means the Packers are going to be doing a lot of Josh Jacobs all over again. And that just means a low scoring, slow game. I think it's going to be like in the low 20s, maybe in the teens. I just don't see a lot of crazy things happening unless someone breaks something free. And that could be Jayden Reed. But over the last, 6 weeks, he's had a score of 2, 6.5, 8, 4, and then a random 13, and then a bye week amongst that time frame. So he's not getting targeted. Some games he got targeted 4 times, 3 times, 2 times, 3 times, and then his rushes are like one time, 0 time, 0 time, 1 time, 0 time. They're just not looking at them. There's too many mouths to feed. There's a reason you don't draft the Bears wide receivers. There's a reason you don't draft the Packers wide receivers. I can't beat this obvious thing to death, but you got to stay away from these guys, man. This is what happens. This is the ramifications of trying to go for a team with too many mouths to feed, too many receivers. You just don't know who's going to go off when. However, Romeo Doubs is out this week.
Right.
So that's why I'm making this a bold bust statement. I think less than 10 points would be a bust in this situation. But I do think Christian Watson is a sneaky play this week.
As long as he catches the ball, man. Him and Quentin Johnson have something going on where, like, who can drop the most passes in the NFL? And just wide open, deep bombs where you just walk into the touchdown and it just kind of falls off your hands. What are you doing?
You know, when you see like superstars or like really good players and you're like, oh, there's a reason I just can't call him like one of my favorites. There's a reason. And these are the things. Yeah. These are the things. You just can't make big plays. Sometimes you just drop the ball in crucial situations, things that Justin Jefferson doesn't do. You know what I mean?
Right. Those are what separate the bad from the good, or the mid from the great. We'll go with that one. All right. So next up, we've got hidden gems, kickers, and defenses. These are some defenses that you need to grab from your free agency if they are still available. So I have actually 4 here, but 2 are the ones I'm more confident with than the other ones. So first, I have Giants at Cowboys, Thanksgiving Day. You know, I think both are playing with backup quarterbacks, Cooper Rush and maybe Tommy DeVito. I don't know who the guy from Giants is, but it's not going to be Daniel Jones. It might just be one of those. It might be historically the most boring Thanksgiving game that has ever been presented to us. And I think that with that being said, that helps the defense for the Giants, even helps the defense for the Cowboys too. So both of those guys, Giants are probably available, could be a potential start for you. And then next up, do you have anything to add to that? Or
yeah, I think I'd go with the Cowboys defense over the Giants defense, just because it's at home and it's live TV and all this stuff. And I think it's not DeVito, by the way. I think he's hurt too much. He didn't even make the trip to Dallas tonight. So I think, but he's still taking his car or something, or coming late, or I don't know what the deal is. But he's not going to be playing. So it's going to be Drew Luck. Or Drew Lock, and I just don't know. He's a gangster. I really like his attitude and everything, but I don't know how that translates into fantasy points. And I think he's going to get murdered in the backfield quite a bit. They're also missing a couple of offensive linemen. I just know that Malik Neighbors will be touching the ball at least 10 times this week because he vocally called out his coach, and his coach agreed. So I have Malik Neighbors in all 3 leagues, and I need him. I need him bad. So I'm just hoping for dump offs to Malik Neighbors, and that's all. That's all I got to say. Cowboys are about to eat, and maybe the Giants too. But I do think Cooper Rush is at the top echelon of backups. I do think he's a better backup than probably every other backup in the league, except for the Vikings backup. Now I think Vikings backup is probably the best backup.
Daniel Jones. Oh man, we're here. Daniel Jones is a better back than Cooper Rush.
You just know, as a Vikings fan, as soon as he was going to get cut, you just knew. You woke up and you're like, huh, he's going to be a fucking Viking, isn't he? He's going to be a Viking.
Which is kind of crazy to me. I mean, this late in the season, I wonder what the plan is for Daniel Jones.
Genius. It's such a great plan. It really is, because we don't have a good backup. We haven't had a good backup for a long time, for a very long time. It's been ages since we've had a good backup. And I think as far as the word good is considered, this is a good backup. He knows how to play football. He's not the best, but he's not the worst. He's just like slightly below average. And that, what better than a KOC-led offensive scheme to make you even better? And I think, he can run the ball. He can throw it far, just not far enough for Malik Neighbors, obviously, but and he can make short intermediate passes, and you have Justin Jefferson to do that. Justin Jefferson is the best intermediate route runner of all time, maybe now. So it can work. Yeah. So if Darnold gets hurt, I don't think our season is doomed just yet.
KOC seems like a QB wizard. It's a good offense too. So I hope that Daniel Jones has a resurrection. I always feel for like players that leave the Steelers. I hope they do well. Like I still hope that Kenny Pickett for the Eagles somehow does well, but it's probably never going to happen. But we shall see. All right, next up, another defense that you guys need to look out for is the Commanders at Titans, and the play on here is the sacks that the Tennessee Titans allowed. 8 sacks on Will Levis. So, every sack is a point or maybe 2 points depending on the league you're in. So even if the Titans score a lot of points, you're hoping that the offensive lineman troubles that they faced last game against Houston is also prevalent against the Commanders. So that's the play I'm playing. So I've got Giants at Cowboys, and Commanders at Titans.
Yeah, solid. I like those two. And I just want to add, I think the Bills play against the 49ers. And that's the only one I really have to add. The Bills versus 49ers, we've seen what it looks like without Brock Purdy on helm. And it doesn't look like Brock Purdy's playing. It's not looking good. Maybe a 21% chance. I don't know where I came up with those numbers, but I feel pretty good about those numbers. So yeah, and the Bills are just, the later into the year, they're like the Derrick Henry of defenses. The later into the playoff time frame they just get better and better. They start figuring things out more. And then they have some of their linebackers who are out, like Milano and all these other guys are just getting better throughout the year, and they're healthier. So I would full send Bills against the 49ers.
Yes, I did see Brock Purdy throwing, or I heard
he threw one pass. He threw
okay.
one pass and then stopped throwing.
Okay, so I see where the number, what was it, 21%? Is that what it is? Yeah, I see where you're getting that. Okay, that makes sense now. All right, so, and then last defense I have, before I take it over to Shishot for kickers, is Seahawks versus Jets. Aaron Rodgers may play, but if he doesn't play, this is only if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play. Tyrod Taylor should be there. So I would consider picking up the Seahawks defense if Aaron Rodgers is not there.
You don't think that makes the Jets better?
You know what? I do worry about that a little bit, but I'm hoping that Tyrod Taylor, I know it's Ty God, right? But I'm hoping there's some sort of mistake that happens, an interception or something. Seahawks defense played pretty well last game, only allowed 6 points against the Cardinals. So, there's good signs there, but I think you're right. It probably does make it better with Tyrod Taylor.
We're here. Aaron Rodgers sucks. Who would have thought? A lot of people did. I didn't, but
Yeah.
All right. And then the last thing for us to tell you guys before your Thanksgiving feast, we have kickers here to discuss with you guys. And my first kicker up here I have is Evan McPherson for the Bengals against Pittsburgh's defense. Pittsburgh's defense is solid. They're really, really good, and they don't really allow many big plays or big scores. And I know the Bengals can move the ball pretty well, but the Steelers defense is formidable. And once you're down in the red zone, you're one TJ Watt sack away from not being able to score and opening up the field goal range. So that's kind of what I'm predicting here. A good defense to hold the other team from scoring touchdowns, but just not good enough to hold them from getting into field goal range, because we know Burrow can get the field goal range at will. So, and then Pittsburgh's offense also doing well, moving the ball, churning along. They're just like this old grandpa of football who's just very knowledgeable and he just says all the right things, but he might have dementia and you just don't know what to make of it. So, I just don't think their offensive line or their offense is going to be airing it out and just keeping up with Burrow, but I do think the defense is going to do a good job to make this a slower game than anticipated, and that just means a lot of field goals. A lot of field goals are going to come in this game. No matter whichever kicker you got in this game, you're going to be happy with. And then my other kicker I have is Matthew Wright, who is the backup of the backup I guess. He's a third backup on a team who has now had their main kicker, Bucker, injured, and the secondary kicker is also injured now and is questionable. And then Matthew Wright just got added to the practice squad. So why are we talking about a kicker that we don't even know if he's that good? Well, he's playing for the Chiefs, and he plays against the team that allows the most field goals in fantasy football or in the NFL, and that's the Las Vegas Raiders. So, Raiders theoretically still do a pretty good job of holding wide receivers from getting in the end zone. That's just perfect for fantasy football. Yep. You don't want to allow touchdowns to receivers? Fine. We'll take points off the air because I'm pretty sure the Chiefs are not worried about losing this game. So they're okay with settling for field goals. You're not going to see many 4th and 2s. We're going to go for it because we have to keep up. No, there's going to be none of that. A lot of field goals are going to be had. And Matthew Wright, I'm expecting at least 14 fantasy points from him.
Yeah, that's a solid play. Kansas City Chiefs can move the ball around. Whether or not they'll get into the red zone against this Raiders we'll see. And that's a solid play with Matthew Wright versus Las Vegas Raiders. That's the episode. That's all we got for you guys. Good luck on week 13. Before we go, Shishot, any Thanksgiving plans? What do you got going on?
I'm going to go hang out with Arena's family down there and get some tryptophan high and watch some football and maybe work on some work notes. Hopefully not. But yeah, a lot of tryptophan coming my way.
That's awesome, man. I am actually cooking turkey for the first time ever this year. I found a recipe on TikTok. I'm going to follow that. We'll see how it goes, man. But thank you guys all for listening. Y'all have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you guys next week. All right. Peace. Crypto man.